pleasure to welcome the Deputy Prime Minister today, Lizzie, to take us back.
Now, the opposition just gave themselves a very high burden in the debate today. They told us they were going to prove that desecrating religious sites caused a direct harm to non-combatants equivalent to denying food and water. Now, we on the proposition, ladies and gentlemen, do not think that's the case. And I'm going to be showing you how this action is not equivalent to that action. I'm going to be looking firstly at the question of choice between targets. I'm going to be looking at the question of the historical arbitrariness of which sites are religiously significant, and thirdly, the idea that if this becomes a legitimate tactical war, it actually creates a less dangerous situation. But first of all, on to what we heard initially from Yuri, and he told us that, okay, this is killing someone's religion, because a religion is important to their identity, and, you know, they really care about not going to hell. But ladies and gentlemen, when you, destroy a church, you don't destroy the ability of someone to practice their religion, okay? If you happen to desecrate a shrine, it doesn't mean that that person, can't worship God anymore. Okay, maybe their arguments apply if we were, preventing people from, praying. But that's not what we're doing, okay? There's, a church down the road. They can do it in their own home with, So it's entirely, a different situation. And this balance that he set up is therefore just completely talking about something entirely different. He then told us we are ignoring the agency of soldiers. We think they're ignoring their agency a lot more when we order them to go and kill people, which is what we do. And I don't know if God's got his priorities right, but I thought we were more about murder being wrong rather than attacking the religious sites of other gods. I mean, I thought God was really jealous anyway. So I don't see why it would necessarily be a problem for religious soldiers when actually these soldiers who are part of those army are also engaged in the process of killing. Murder being one of the things which pretty much across the board in religions people think of as wrong. And then Yuri said, aha, but the difference is that we ask those soldiers to do that in the course of combat. What they ignored was all Ben's stuff about how this is the action of desecrating these religious sites is a part of that combat. These religious sites are used by the state as a source of giving those states a power. It's a rallying point for that state identity. And it ignored all of that stuff about how, since this is, as we are arguing, supposedly a legitimate act of war, the idea is that it is then part of the course of conduct. So we think that is a false distinction between those two things. And then he said, well, okay, well, I mean, if they can, say that it's okay to bomb religious sites in the name of war, then they're saying that we should bomb orphanages instead. Okay, so what did that response do? They said, first of all, it conceded that this is actually an effective tool of war. They said that, the main problem is that we hadn't proven that it was supposedly legitimate as well. Whereas the whole idea is what I'm going to be looking at. Is there a real distinction between doing something which takes away life and doing something which attacks a historical site? They also accused us, aha, that this will become a symbol of struggle, which actually fits in quite well with Ben's stuff about how these points are rallying, these sites are rallying sites for a state's identity, for the they're being kind of moralised in war, ready to go to war. So actually, it is a really effective, legitimate target. Okay, so first of all, this idea of choice between targets. So in a war, these combatants, they want to demoralise the enemy, or they just want to be seen to be doing something. And we think it's good if wars can end as quickly as possible, because then the fewest number of people die. So if there's going to be a choice of things they do to demoralise the enemy, we'd much rather they do the thing where people don't die in the process of doing that, if they're going to be demoralising the enemy in some way. And given that the ability to go to religiously significant sites is something that kind of adds a bit of value to your life, but isn't definitely not above that life in the sense you couldn't go and visit them if you were dead. And so we think that if we're talking about a choice between actions we can take to demoralise the enemy, one that we should do is that we should desecrate the religious site of it rather than go and bomb their armoury or their orphanage or whatever and risk more lives. I also secondly like to look at this idea of the kind of historical, the changing meaning of religious sites. Because when these places are gone, religion hasn't lost something forever. What attaches meaning to these places is very changeable. We reconstruct myths around these things, so even if people can't visit the sites, they still talk about the saints that they were there. They just assign significance to new buildings, and we see that throughout history. Frequently places get destroyed. People don't feel that they've become less religious just as a result, they just shift the site of where they attach that religious significance to. So it doesn't make a tangible difference in people's lives if they just switch where they're, like, which saint they're going to visit. Yes.
It doesn't make a tangible difference to a secular person. To a religious person, it makes a hell of a lot of difference.
So what I'm saying is, listen to me, I'm saying that the religious significance isn't attached to one specific site, it's attached to a religion which has a number of important sites, okay? So because you are religious, you think that churches have value. If one church is destroyed, you don't lose a sense of your religiousness as a result. And we think that people are very able to switch where they're attaching their loyalty to. That is an important part of that. Okay, thirdly, I'd like to look at this idea of what happens if this becomes a sort of legitimate tactical war and people get used to the idea that it's something that happens. At the moment, what happens is that it's kind of seen as a completely taboo subject and that people don't really want to talk about it, find it a creepy idea. And then what happens is if someone does go and graffiti the graveyard, it's like, oh my god, this is like the most insane thing. The proportionate response is definitely not to go and graffiti their graveyard, but actually to bomb them to the ground, which we think is a much more dangerous state of affairs. And if this is seen as a legitimate tactical war, it loses that taboo that then makes it seem that the proportionate response is to completely overreact. And obviously, as Ben said, we're not defending a state of affairs where this is always the action that states or militant groups take against other states. We are just saying that because it is something that is effective and because it is something that we don't think the opposition have proven to us has a special significance equivalent to denying someone food and water, that they can't simply defend separating these sites of religious significance out from other potential sites. As Ben talked about, what is the difference between destroying a piece of land and one that happens to have historically been up to this point assigned religious significance, when that religious significance changes very often. So what we've done on proposition today is we've shown you how this is an incredibly effective tactic of war. And if we have a larger number of tools of war in our arsenal, what that means is that wars don't have to drag out so much. Things which help wars end quicker, help fewer lives be lost, and make these war situations better, so it's effective. We've also shown you how it's legitimate, because it's not the same, ladies and gentlemen, as denying someone from practicing their religion. And even if it was the same, we still think that life is more important than the ability to practice your religion. And so for these reasons, I beg to oppose.